So the deep focused concentration that research demands of us can protect us from these more shallow forms of entertainment. And I believe even if you're not a researcher yourself, you can learn something from this mindset. So I truly believe that life is a continuous quest for knowledge, and most of us want to tap into this knowledge. If you clicked on this video, one of the problems you might have encountered is that it's really difficult nowadays to direct your attention at the topics that you find most important. And a small group of people that I believe have really honed this skill are researchers. So currently you probably want to learn something. You are curious about a random topic such as psychiatry, neuroscience, or mathematics, and you want to sit down for dedicated hours at a time. However, to do this, it is quite complicated if you're not at university anymore, or even if you're still a student. And I think here we can really learn something from both PhD students and researchers as to how they hone this skill. So I want to show you today how I believe research inherently makes us lose track of time, being so absorbed in a project that you cannot let go, and how this mindset can actually translate into your daily life. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about the myth, I believe, of that we cannot focus anymore. So we can focus, I believe. However, this focus is oftentimes non-directed. So it's oftentimes in topics such as our phone or maybe a random movie. So for us to sit down and watch a movie for 3 hours straight, for most people is relatively easy. And that shows us that we do still have this ability to focus. However, the real issue then is that focus is often directed by default and not with intention. So what we actually want to train over time is to be able to direct our attention to the topics that we found most interesting. The challenge then is to move from this reactive attention to proactive or chosen focus, which I think research is one of the perfect tools to train yourself with. There are other ways to train this, which I will talk a little bit about at the end of the video, but first let's dive a little bit into research. So in general, an average project for a PhD lasts about 1 to 2 years, I would say, at least in my field of study, which is neuroscience and computational neuroscience. So during this time, the art is to wake up every day, move to your desk, and sit down with a problem that seems fundamentally impossible because it has not ever been researched before until you actually decided to sit down with it. So the fundamental nature then of this entire practice is that you will struggle, and you will struggle for many hours at a time. And I found that as I continued in my PhD, I think I got a little bit better at this dedicated time creation for struggling, basically, and that you sit down day after day and truly try to focus. So what I find interesting about PhDs and other students around me is their ability to focus, really, to lock in and really try to finish a single task. And part of this probably comes from the curiosity-driven nature of research, but I also think part of it is the training. And this is the sitting in long lectures, memorizing facts, reading over difficult books, and all of these are fundamentally exercises in training our attention as well as our knowledge. And over time, this strengthens your ability to sit down. But even if you're not at university, you can use these same types of techniques to improve your own focus. So I wanted to give you a few of these techniques or a few of these practices that you can implement in your own life, and that I also try to implement outside of university, such as not to kind of get dragged into these more easy forms of entertainment, even when I finish my day for university. So one of the things that you can do is you try to pick a really difficult book. I have a list of difficult books that I want to read, and I think reading these types of books is its own practice that's very similar to research. So usually you want to learn a little bit about a certain topic. And in this case, for me, it's conversations in critical psychiatry. So that's a little bit about the tension or the ethics of psychiatry in general. One of the ways I could do this, of course, is to watch a YouTube video or to quickly see what ChatGPT has to say about it. But I would actually not recommend doing this always. I think the practice of diving into a book, really trying to learn from these authors what they have to say, and over time really try to get in their mindset, is the practice of honing your attention. So if you want to try this, what you can do is you pick up a book on one difficult topic that you want to learn about. And this can also be a longer article that you, for example, always have wanted to read but found a little bit more difficult. And if you don't have any author that you know that's really difficult, you can always read this book. So That's Idiots by Dostoevsky. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's okay. So this is a famous, really difficult book for people to read. So that can also be a pick. But otherwise, you can pick one of the books that you have lying in your closet. And then what you try to do every day is you try to sit down for a dedicated amount of time. So for example, maybe to start, this is only 10 minutes. And during those 10 minutes, you try to read the book. And every time your mind wanders, you bring it back to the main task. And you really try to monitor or note down what you are thinking about during this reading. Because what I found really interesting is that actually our mind wanders very fast to other topics or other tasks that we can be doing. And not giving into these temptations is, in general, the practice. So it's not only reading this difficult task or reading this difficult book, but it's also the practice of really trying to focus on what you're reading. So set a timer, and even for a few minutes, try to commit to finishing one page or 10 minutes of reading. And do not allow yourself to move on to another task until you have finished the time that you had set for the tasks. So no phone checking, no email, no nothing. And I know this is really difficult. Still to this day, I find it difficult to sit down longer than an hour, even though I've trained this skill for many years. It is quite complicated, and especially with more difficult reading material. So if you have a really interesting fantasy book, it is quite often easy to get into it. But these more difficult philosophy books, mathematics books, or physics books are hard to read, and the ability to sit down and read them is, in general, the strength that you're trying to train. So a few other things that you can notice during this practice is being aware of whether your attention is voluntary or reactive, and having the ability to kind of focus your attention on the task at hand that you want to. Also short mental check-ins, like when were you distracted, what were you distracted by, what were you thinking about, all of these kind of things. And also if you do decide to task switch, which sometimes happens, right? Like sometimes someone walks in and you need to talk to them a little bit, or there's something really important that you suddenly thought about. See how long it takes you to get back to the main task. So in this case, the reading task that you were doing, and try to note this down. I think you will be shocked about how much time you are losing in general when you truly take note of how you spend your time. So thirdly, I wanted to talk a little bit about some books on attention that I've personally worked with a lot and that have really helped me over the years to learn more about this topic. So a really famous one, of course, is Deep Work by Cal Newport. So I really like this book. Currently, I don't really read it anymore because I think the first time I picked it up was already a while ago, probably when it just came out. And over time, I've really integrated these messages that Cal Newport teaches us. But in general, he has these routines. So he says, create a routine for deep work, have a dedicated time block for deep work. So for example, every day about 2-3 hours. Embrace boredom. So that is also really something to do. I think boredom and the ability to learn how to deal with boredom over time is also something that you truly learn as a PhD student, as a researcher. So things are not always inherently fun, and being able to sit with this boredom and pushing through is one of the abilities that you will also train. So also with a more difficult book. And I, in general, highly recommend reading the book if you've never thought about these topics. I don't think we can get into all of the tips that he gives. And I also think different tips work for different people because we're always, or all of us are a little bit different, but definitely recommend giving the book a read. The second book that I personally also really liked was The Flow States. And this is about, in general, he coined the term of flow state. I won't try to pronounce his name, but flow is this state of full task engagement. And how you get to a flow state is by having a perfect balance between your skill level and the amount of expertise or the amount of resources basically a task needs. And in general, a really interesting book. It's written a little bit more for researchers, so it is quite difficult to maybe read as a general audience, but I do definitely recommend if you're interested in flow or interested in this whole concept of deep work to also give this a go. Lastly, something else that has really influenced lately my ability or my thought patterns about attention, paying attention, focus is mindfulness. So I have gotten into a little bit more mindfulness, also meditation, and I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't think I'm at all an expert. I am also really curious if you are someone that practices mindfulness or meditation, if you have any resources for me, because I think I can actually learn maybe more from you guys than the other way around. But definitely what I have noticed, even though I think I'm okay with concentrating, I can sit down for long periods of time and really focus, I didn't know that my mind was so chaotic at times. And I think the only way that I learned it over time was through meditation. So during meditation, you really try to learn the act of observing your own mind. And I think it's really interesting. I don't think you definitely need a dedicated meditation practice, but during this practice, I was really reminded of how similar for me the state of true mindfulness meditation is to researching or being in a research state. So definitely also something to think about if you want to improve your attention skills. And then lastly, I truly believe that technology is changing a little bit our relationship with attention, because a lot of these companies are trying to vie for our attention or trying to buy our attention. And one of the skills that we want to learn or want to improve at is how to direct our own attention and not let it escape us. Because then I do truly think that life can slip you by a little bit. Reflecting on my own experience as a student, I think there was very little media at that time still about physics, which I studied during my bachelor's. And I think that taught me to really sit down with these more difficult books and really try to understand the fundamentals of physics, not from YouTube videos, not from online material, although I do think these can be really valuable, but actually from first point resources, so from books. And even though I think you can learn faster through watching YouTube videos, I do think the skill of sitting down with a book and really trying to understand it is really helpful. Like this tenacity of sitting down with a difficult topic day after day, which you learn as a PhD student, as a researcher, and which I also hope that you will learn through this dedicated reading practice. So focus is a skill, and I truly believe, like any other skill, you can improve focus. And in general, I'm actually also really curious how you all improve your focus, if you have a dedicated practice to improve your focus, if there are tasks that you notice are really easy to improve your focus. I know this is a little bit more a rambly video, but it's something that I've lately become really curious about focusing, attention, why it is that some people can sit down for 4 hours and not get distracted, whereas others of us have difficulty even sitting down for 5 minutes. So I would love to hear all of your theories and also any resources or recommendations you have for me as to what I should read to learn more about this topic. So if you're currently trying to research a new topic, dive into a new learning project, the real skill is also not to just find the right information, but understanding it and practicing it often. And this is where Brilliant comes in, today's sponsor of the video. So Brilliant helps you become a better thinker, I think, and problem solver with quick interactive lessons in science, math, data, and more, designed to train your reasoning in a way that real researchers think, with hands-on examples and short interactive lessons. A course I personally really like to train this is scientific thinking. So it's all about breaking down problems, testing assumptions, and building clear reasoning from the ground up, with fun, easy lessons that you can do anywhere. I often do it when I'm personally waiting for the train or for the bus, or in general when I have a quick break from work. Learning a little bit every day can be an easy way to reach your learning goals. To start learning for free, go to brilliant.org, Charlotte Fraza, or scan the QR code on the screen, or click the link in the description. Brilliant is also giving viewers 20% off an annual premium subscription, which unlocks unlimited access to everything they offer. So thank you for joining this video, and I hope to see you next week. Bye!